Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So, good evening to you all. Previously, we were discussing regarding one of the environment issue, that is the fisheries issue, and the new agreement that has been included in the WTO system. Now, in the context of conservation of fishes, there already exists an international law provision through Unclos, that is United Nations Convention on Law of Sea. That is a specific agreement signed by many of the member states of the United Nations. So, actually the objectives that are laid down under the fisheries agreement of the WTO, they are quite closer to that of those agreement, the provisions of the Unclos. Rather, within the ambit of Unclos, we will find wider ambit of conservation of the fisheries and the extent of the rights the states to have to catch the fishes or to trade with the fishes. So, in that context, I have tried to combine both the provisions from these two different agreements. And now I continue with the discussions from the Unclos perspective, because basically it is the aims and objectives of the Unclos has to be complied through the roadmap that is created by the WTO through the agreement on fisheries. So, in the light of that, it would be more enlightening to elaborate what is mentioned in the Unclos here. The living resources provisions of Unclos recognizes international interdependence on these resources and provide a framework for their cooperative and sustainable management. So, firstly, I would like to emphasize here, within the Unclos, it is not that fishing is prohibited or there is a strict regulation or strict mandate by any particular member state or any particular institution not to catch the fish, or this is the extent of fishing that can be done. But it tries to create the environment among the member states that they should be cooperative when they are using the resources of the sea, and it is termed as living resources of the sea, which includes fish, shells and many other living creatures that are found in the sea water or the marine life that can be said in one single term. So, how that can be used by the cooperation of the states. Now, the concept of cooperation is not something included in the international law from somewhere, let us say, or it is devised by any country or from somewhere by treaty obligations. It is this cooperation concept is based on customary law practices among the nations, since the customary law practices of the nation and the natural law principle, that whatever is existing in the nature, that belongs to all of us. So, there cannot be restrictions that only bigger state can use it, or the states that have bigger coastline they can use it. But since this property or all the resources that exist in the nature belongs to entire humankind, therefore, all of us do have respective share in the resources of the sea. So, in that respect, cooperation is required, but then the question arises that if we keep on exploiting the sea resources or keep on using it, or we do not realize what is the threshold limit, then definitely that will lead to extinction of various species or putting various species, living species in endangered position or in endangered situation that already exist. So, in the light of that, the concept of sustainable management has also been introduced in the Unclos, and for that, to enable this or to facilitate these objectives, the fisheries agreement under the WTO is quite facilitating. These provisions comprising Articles 61 through 73 deal specifically with conservation under Article 61. Now, there is a difference between the term conservation and preservation. In case of conservation, it's not that we are denied to use anything, we are denied to use a thing, but to certain limits. So, there is a limit. Also, conservation means we can use that, and then we also add for its protection or for its procreation. That means it does not reaches to the depletion stage. So, that kind of responsibility has to be realized when we use the term conservation. And utilization, as stated earlier, that the resources belong to all of us, so that has to be utilized for the needful purposes, not for the very fancy purposes or for commercial purpose or for seeking the profit. So, all that the term use of any such resources has to be qualitatively evaluated, whether the use of natural resources is meant for utility, whether it's for luxury, or whether it's for seeking commercial benefits. Straddling and transboundary fish stocks. Now, this further divides the kind of the stock of the fish, because there has been disputes among the nations regarding the stocks of the fish, because when we talk about the sea life or the marine life, there has been, they move from one shore to the another shore, and or one coastline to the another coastline. One coastline to another coastline means that they are crossing one country to the another country, and it may vary where they are trapped. So, let us say there is a France and England, they are, let us say, divided by English Channel. So, it can be that at some part of the year there is a movement of fish from English side to the French side, and if they are, and most of the fishes are caught in the English side, so there will be very less fishes reaching to the French side. Or likewise, when they have laid the eggs at the French side, and then they are returning from French side to the English side, and if most of the fishes are trapped at the French side, so there will be very less fishes available in the English side. So, in that way also we need to understand, and there has been several disputes with regard to the fishing rights, and one such dispute that comes into my mind is the Iceland fishery case, where the dispute arose between Iceland and Britain, because Britain used to sail its trawlers, fishing trawlers, to the north and quite closer to the Icelandic waters. And Icelandic parliament, by enacting a law, allowed its fishing vessels to navigate even more than the territorial waters and contiguous zone up till 50 nautical miles. That at that point of time was considered outside the reach of the domain of the sovereign law. That means the Icelandic law is not applicable up till the 50 nautical miles, but still the Icelandic parliament allowed its fishing trawlers to catch the fishes, whereas the British fishing trawlers, they find it difficult to come closer to the Icelandic waters, because there was a question of interest between both the parties, and the British parliament was interpreting that such waters should be considered as high seas, or they should be considered as outside the domain of Icelandic sovereignty. So, therefore, Icelandic parliament has no right to allow its trawlers to navigate up till that point, and that led to quite a big dispute between the two, and finally that was resolved by the international court. So, there has been several such disputes with regard to the fishes, because the north of Europe is very much relying on the proteins that are available through the fish catch. The same is with regard to the straddling and transboundary, where there is a movement of fisheries from one coastline to another coastline, and sometimes the fishes, they are laying eggs at the freshwater lakes, and then they are returning to the sea. So, their movement is like from the seawater to the freshwater, or from freshwater to the seawater. So, in that case also it's difficult to define whether those the stock of the fish belong to which country. Marine mammals, anadromous stocks, catadromous species, sedentary species, right of landlocked states and geographically disadvantaged nations. So, all do have the rights in their own terms, as discussed earlier, that they are further, the rights are classified further in terms of primary rights and the secondary rights. The coastline area or the land having coastline, they have the primary rights, and the landlocked countries or the geographically disadvantageous nations, they have the secondary rights, and they need to firstly seek the permission of the coastal states, and then only they can navigate to closer to their waters for catching the fishes. In addition, sedentary continental shelf species are further considered in Article 77, Clause 4. Living resources on high sea are considered in Article 116 and 120, protection of marine environment. So these all are the specific provisions included in the Unclos for the protection of various species all across, like the continental shelf area and on the high sea. So there are different set of rules, because as per the law of sea, the sovereign claim of the state is up till the territorial waters, that is 12 nautical miles. Then the commercial claim or the some restrictive claims are available up till contiguous zone, that is further 12 nautical miles. And after that, the exclusive economic zone that exists up till 200 nautical miles, that is mainly for the use of resources, economic resources for the economic purposes. The fishing is permissible up till the exclusive economic zone area. Beyond that is the high sea, where anyone can do the fishing. So in that respect, there is a classification of the set of rights which the member states do have, and in the light of that, the rights of the other parties also depend. That means if there are two neighboring states having a common water body and they are sharing that water body on two different coastal sites, so both the states will have the right. So in that reference, like if there is a proximity of the two countries like India and Sri Lanka, there is a narrow water channel that flows between them. So how we will define the fishing right of both the parties? Can there be an exclusive fishing right of the India or exclusive fishing right of Sri Lanka? So that is the reason why many a times we find or we come to know that the Indian trawlers or the Indian fishermen, they incidentally crosses or come closer to the Sri Lankan coastline. So it is in cases where there are close coastline among the two different nationalities, there such like situation do occur, and that is why the international conventions, they have emphasized that it should be resolved on a cordial manner, or in the that should be decided between the parties on a cooperative manner. Article 61 and 62 of the Unclos, conservation and utilization of living resources. Unclos recognizes the broad authority of the coastal nations over living resources within its territorial sea and exclusive economic zone. So exclusive economic zone, that is 200 nautical miles area from the coastline, that is the recognized point up till which length the fishing can be done. Seawards from the baseline used to measure the territorial sea, and in managing living resources, coastal nations are to determine allowable catch and promote optimal resource use within their exclusive economic zone. Now when we say exclusive economic zone area, up till there the coastal states do have the rights for commercial exploitation, but then they have to be very careful that the fishing catch or the catch of any living resources they do, it should not be to the extent of depletion, or they even push those catches to the extent of endangered species. So that has to be very carefully done. That is why the mandate has been issued by various international conventions on endangered species, not to do the fishing of various species where they have found such of them in the endangered category. However, the term maximum sustainable yield, Article 61, and optimum utilization are open to interpretation and may require further definition to provide additional guidelines on how to attain sustainable harvest and management of living resources. So these are again the matters of interpretation. What do we mean by sustainable catch, or what is the sustainable yield? Because it's not feasible to do the count of fishes in general, but random, let's say, estimation is made, and within that estimation we can't say that for this year this much of catch is enough, or for since the last year the catch of to this extent this much ton was done, so we go by the same amount. So that may again put us in some risky position whether there will be the same level of reproduction of the fishes or not. or any such marine life. So, still we cannot in strict terms define what do we mean by the term sustainable yield, because it could be there is a great loss to the fishes because of some disease, or there is a loss because of the oil spill, or some other reasons that do happen in the sea waters, and may require further definition to provide additional guidance on how to attain sustainable harvest and management of living resources. Some experts define maximum sustainable yields as the highest possible annual catch that can be continuously taken from a stock under existing environmental conditions that still allows the population to itself and keeps the stock at the level producing the maximum growth of its population. Now, that again is the estimated figure or estimated quantity that, since for the years we have been doing this much of catch. So, we continue with the practice of catching to this extent, but as stated to you, we do not know what other challenges these living species are facing, and if there is no constant vigil being done, or there is no constant research being done, the kind of challenges, or let us say their numbers, whether that remains intact or not, that may again put us in a risky zone. Now comes with this I end the concept of trade and environment, which I have dealt with the example, particular example on fisheries, the trade between developed and developing nations, where I cited the example of Clemenceau ship, and also the paper industry, the Swedish and Finnish paper industry that has moved to the Brazil area. Now, with this the topic on trade and environment is over. Of course, that still there are many such crucial issues that still remain unresolved. The only thing is that why environment issues are taken so lightly or are considered as soft law issues, because the consequences of environment degradation or effect on environment cannot be seen immediately. So, it takes time to for us to realize that the consequences we are facing today is because of the reasons for those consequences can be traced somewhere 50 years back, or can be traced somewhere 100 years back. So, keeping in mind the time of this time of its effect, or the period of its effect, we need to be cautious enough for the future endeavors in terms of trade, or in any activity that is related to the promotion of trade, that how it is going to affect the environment. Thank you. So, now after this we start with another topic, that is sanitary and phytosanitary measures. We have often heard that the goods that are now exported or imported, that also includes the food items, or the items that are used in day-to-day activity, but that affects our health also. So, in the light of that, special agreement is included in the WTO trading system, that is agreement on sanitary and phytosanitary measure. Keeping in mind the health effect of the eatables or any such utilities that we are using, how that is produced, how it is packed, whether it has been disinfected or not, or what are the kind of microbes that are reacting on it. So, all that requires some kind of data, and based on that data it has to be regularized whether those standards are met or not. So, the WTO has set certain rules. Of course, there cannot be uniformity because of various reasons, like the geographical conditions are different, the climatic conditions of the two places, they are not same, or let us say the bacteria or the microorganisms in one part of the world, they may differ from that of the other part of the world. Therefore, in the light of this, we need to understand what can be the minimum standards that can be maintained for the hygienic conditions, or for the conditions to maintain some standards for the health reasons. Now, the agreement on application of sanitary and phytosanitary measures entered into force with the establishment of World Trade Organization on 1st January 1995. It concerns the application of food safety and animal and plant health regulations. So, it's a widely covered area, mainly concerning the health reasons or health concerns about the human beings, about other living creatures also. Now, it is something that is included in the movement of goods, because the e-tables that I am discussing here, they are part of the goods. Secondly, it's for the same reason that when tariff were reduced or when trade liberalization was discussed, then there was a question that the tariffs should be reduced for the free movement of goods. And secondly, it was stated that there can be classification or restrictions on the goods either based on quality or based on standards of quality. So the two terms were stated in that reference. One is qualitative restriction and another is quantitative restrictions. So what we mean by qualitative restrictions is if those standards or qualities are not met, that means the health related qualities or health related standards are not met. So whether that there some restrictions can be imposed by the importing nation or not. Then secondly, keeping in mind the free trade principle, one has to be cautious enough that such like quality based restrictions are not used in a protectionist manner. So the protectionist approach that has to be decoupled with this of the quality standards, and the genuine reason or the genuine cause of quality standard has to be understood and analyzed. Now the question is that whether we do find the rightful standard of quality, or how do we determine the rightful standard of quality based on which the restrictions can be imposed. So that is definitely still a technical question and also a complex question. The background I start here. There are detailed and lengthy schedules or list of commitments made by individual countries allowing specific foreign products or service providers access to their market. So after the free trade, or let's say formation of the WTO and the commitments that are made by the member states, there has been member states have gradually started liberalizing their policy for the movement of goods, and they have reduced the quantity based restrictions mainly, either by means of reducing the tariff structure or the quota system that earlier was existing has been now totally eroded. So with this, the only thing is now the quality based restrictions that still come into picture. For GATT, these takes the form of binding commitment on tariff for goods in general and combination of tariffs and quota for some agriculture goods. Now sanitary and phytosanitary measure, they are very closely related to the agriculture products. So the member states, when they signed the agriculture agreement on agriculture, and within the agreement on agriculture, it is clearly mentioned that the member states will abide by the rules and provisions as included in sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So there is a provision included in agreement on agriculture that links the agriculture products or the trade in agriculture goods with sanitary and phytosanitary measure. So any restriction on agriculture product, any restrictions on the movement of agriculture goods or crops which is based on sanitary and phytosanitary measures can be justified. Of course, the application there or the restrictions that are imposed on the ground of sanitary and phytosanitary measures must be genuine, or they must not be discriminatory in nature. So that in the light of that, we need to analyze many new things, that what standards should be adopted by the countries. Much of the Uruguay round dealt with the first two parts, general principles and the principles for specific sector. At the same time, market access negotiations were possible for industrial goods. So when the discussions were going on with regard to the industrial goods during the Uruguay round here means during the formative stage of the WTO. At that time itself, it was discussed that how we will include the sanitary and phytosanitary measures or the restrictions that can be imposed based on the quality and the standards of food products and agriculture products. At the same time, market access negotiations were possible for industrial goods. Once the principles had been worked out, negotiations could proceed on the commitments for sectors such as agriculture and services. So after the negotiations on goods were complete, or they were almost on the completion, on the verge of completion, the negotiators started about these measures as well. Negotiations after the Uruguay round and before the Doha round began in 2001 focused largely on market access commitments. Now this requires the free market access. That means the food products from the foreign country or from abroad, they should not be discriminated. Free access means they should not be discriminated. Here it's not simply the question of simple discrimination or discrimination based on tariff, but any propaganda if that is raised, or if any such issue that is raised concerning their quality or concerning the ingredients they do have or concerning their packaging style, that can lead to very reverse consequences, or that can be very damaging to the exporter countries. Focused based on market access commitments, financial services, basic telecommunications and maritime transportation and information technology under GATT. Food and agriculture exporters faced variety of cost when assessing market for their goods. That is very general, that the food and agriculture, there are several categories of cost that is imposed. Sometimes those costs are not direct, but they are like if the right kind of packaging is not done by a particular industry. For example, let's say many food items are, let's say, exported from Asian countries to the European countries. So it can be that they require, the European market require those packaging to be done in specific manner, or there must be it must be properly stamped that those quality checks has been done with some certification. Then so all that needs the financial, let's say, the cost. In the light of that, what will be the consequence? That the cost of that food item or any such export item will increase automatically. So that kind of issues need to be understood clearly, but then it depends to what extent the compromises can be done with the quality. So that is definitely negotiable, but then the negotiable limits are also depending upon country to country. These costs go beyond tariffs and extend to a number of areas, including the cost of complying with a variety of regulatory measures and standards set by both public institutions and private organizations. So who gives us the guideline that these are kind of quality measures we need to fulfill, and from where these guidelines are issued, whether they are private organizations or they are the government organizations issuing those guidelines. Tariffs are generally published in national schedules and thus easily identified and quantified. These non-tariff measures can be more difficult to navigate and can have a much ultimate cost to suppliers. So far as the tariffs are concerned, or the general let's say duties are concerned, that's clearly identified because it's easily accessible in the printed form, written that 2% custom duty or 2% the carriage duty is deducted. So that is identified. But when we say what is the packaging cost or what is the cost of the lab test for the cost that the producer has to bear for its certification from any standard laboratory or standard organization, that cannot be included, or that is generally not included. But to an extent it affects the market of any exporter or any producer or anyone who is trading with the food items. Among the most significant of non-tariff measures for food and farm products are sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Sanitary and phytosanitary measures are one such rules and regulations that generate cost basically. But what are the genuine rules and regulations that are applicable on the food items? That are those agreed by the WTO. Sanitary and phytosanitary measures are applied to protect the health of a country's citizen and ecosystem. So first thing, it should be clear that what are the objectives for including this agreement, or including, let's say, in general, if someone asks what is the sanitary and phytosanitary measure, they are basically kind of quality check for keeping in mind the health, the people and all the living creatures. So that is why the broad term ecosystem has been used. That means it simply is not specific to the human beings, but to plant life or to the animal life. So therefore sanitary and phytosanitary measures, they are applied, or they are the rules that are applied to protect the health of countries, citizens and ecosystem. According to Annexure A of the WTO Sanitary and Phytosanitary Agreement, a sanitary and phytosanitary measure is any measure applied to, so that can be any measure, that means any, justifiable measures. Here again the question arises that what do we mean by the term measure, or what is the standard of the measure. So that has to be again clarified, that it can't be an arbitrary measure. It has to be based on, now here that simply is not a legal measure. That measure has to be supported by scientific data, or let's say by some lab research analysis, that this is the kind of measure that has to be adopted. For example, let's say a country is importing chicken, and it's found that those chickens are infected. So the country cannot allow the import of those infected chicken. But then the question arises, how the importing country will come to know whether these are infected chicken or not. So there has to be some test that has to be applied. So in the light of that test, there will be the cost that has to be borne by the parties, and who will bear the cost, or to what extent that cost will be shared between the parties. So these are the kind of issues covered under sanitary and phytosanitary measures. And definitely it's very clear that any nation, importing nation, mainly importing the foodstuff, cannot accept that kind of infected food item, neither for its people nor for any of its living creature, that includes animal or plant. Protect animal or plant life or health within the territory of the members from the risk arising from entry, establishment or spread of pests, disease carrying organisms or disease causing organisms. So when we say that the measures has to be applied, now for what reason those measures has to, firstly, what is the standard of measures? That standard of measure depend upon scientific or technology based data, or some technology based evidences. It can't be something the law has simply approved, but there has to be support of these parameters. There is, what is the who are the stakeholders, or to whom this protection is needed. So they are basically the protection is required to the animals, human beings, animals, plant life, or the health in general of the people where these goods are imported. So all they cover, or that gives eligibility to the member states to put restrictions on the food items that are imported. Protect animal or plant life or health within the territory of the member from risk arising from entry. Now how it is going to put check, that is, it is not going to permit the entry of such food items or any such item that can be risky to the health. Now that entry means from, whether it's through the air route or through the land route or through the sea route. Entry, establishment or spread of pests. So it can be either through entry or establishment of any unit. Let's say that eatable company is trying to, or it's planning to open any unit, or it's trying to create any warehouse for the storage of the food items, and it's known that the company, the food items of the company, they are infected, or they are not meeting the health standard. So that kind of establishment cannot be accepted. Or if there is a existing establishment of that company, then that has to be thoroughly investigated by the country, so as to put check on the spread of any such risk or any such health risk. Risks that are arising from entry or for the establishment, that explained, whether it's a warehouse or any production unit, food production unit, or spread of pests, disease carrying organisms or disease causing organisms. So all these categories are included where those restrictions can be imposed under sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Now one has to be cautious enough that again we have to draw the distinction between arbitrary protectionism and then the protectionism based on these kind of risks. So there can be, of course, like the earlier discussions has been made on from the WTO perspective, that one is the protectionist approach when there is a competition between the like products from different countries. There the member states do apply the protectionist technique. That is something for the economic reason or for the commercial reasons, where we say that one country will be benefited or financially benefited by adopting the protectionist approach in comparison to the other country exporting the same kind of goods. But here that protectionism is of different nature. So it's not the same as the economic benefit, but here it is for the protection, means the health related protection that we are discussing about. Although there, why I have emphasized here this, because there can be an incidental effect. So how it can be that there is an incidental effect, because any kind of commercial, let's say, interest can be taken in the garb of, or in the disguised form of protectionism being adopted because of the health reason. Let's say if an agenda is set, or if it is stated that the eatable coming from this and this country are not good for health, but that is not the real intention to put, let's say, to consider the health as a priority, but the main objective is to gain economic advantage to the countries or to the domestic producers. So that is where we can say that there is some kind of there can be an overlapping effect between two different kind of protectionism. So that is the reason why the scientific data or scientific evidences are required. Now, one such example in the Indian context is where the Patanjali company, they stated that the Maggi that contains lead, and the extent of lead that is available in the Nestle produced Maggi is quite health injurious, which was later found to be not the correct picture. So that is one such example where we say it has to be supported by scientific evidences. What are the objectives for sanitary and phytosanitary measure? Basically, it is to protect human or animal life or health within the territory of the member. So it is confined to the territorial domain of the member state. It can't be beyond that region. So to protect human or animal life or health within the territory of members from the risk arising from additives, contaminants, toxins or disease causing organisms in food, beverages or feedstuffs. So where are the risk spots, or what are the risk spots? First is additives. Sometimes these flavors are added, or let's say the colorings are added. It can be that they are not suitable to particular market area, or they are not healthier, or they are not good for health to the particular people from particular region. So those kind of additives have to be reduced, or what is the right measure of additives that can be used. For example, let's say the Indian pickle. So that is again very spicy thing. Although that is the Indians are in general very comfortable with the pickles that is produced in India, but if the same pickle is exported and is used by any foreign, let's say, consumer, so realizing the use of additives there, he may find things getting complicated, and he may require that whatever is added to its flavor or to its taste must be listed clearly, and it could be that realizing what are the health issues related to it must be known. For example, let's say those who are prone to blood pressure, so if there is a high amount of sodium in any product, so that is definitely one such ingredient that affect the health of the person. So it has to be listed very clearly that this product contains this much of sodium. Likewise, to counter the effect of this sodium, there can be added potassium. So because they both have inverse effect. So whatever is the effect of sodium can be counterbalanced by the potassium. So that can be like another addition to it. But I mean to say here, it should be clearly listed what are the ingredients added to it. Risk arising from additives, contaminants. So sometimes the food is not pure, it is contaminated, like instead of let's say the fresh product, the rotten one is, or let's say the decaying product is mixed with the fresh product, and thinking that this can be sold easily because it has not been sold. So this definitely is quite health risky, because that can have its own consequences, or the bacterial effect on the people, those who are using the old product or the rotten product or the decaying product. Toxins or disease causing organisms in foods, beverages. Beverages means the drinks, fizzy drinks, or the other wide variety of drinks, or the feedstuffs that are used by the animals also. So it's covering all a variety of the food items for both human beings and also for the animals. Basically, the objective is to protect human life or health within the territory of the member from risk arising from disease carried by animals, plants or products thereof, from the entry, established or spread of pests. Now, what is the source of these, let's say, infectants? That can be through the animals. That means any product that is made by the animal, or the animals carrying these infections. Plants that are introduced in the foreign market, or that are coming from the foreign market, or the products that are made from animals or the plants, both, their entry, the entry of either the animals, plants, or the products that are made from animals or plants, if they are introduced in a foreign country, that has to be quality checked in terms of its health standards. Thereof, or from the entry, establishment or spread of pests, or prevent or limit other damage within the territory of the member from entry, establishment or spread of pests. So, so far as the known damages or the known health concern are concerned, that can be easily, let's say, discussed, or that can be easily restricted, or that can be claimed that these are the available data for these kind of disease, and we are putting restrictions on these kind of food items because they are infected, or we have some suspicion that the entry of these food items may lead to the spread of these diseases. But then there is other damages. Other damages include what has not been known till now, or it is expected that something of new variety can happen, or a new infection can be there, which has not been existing previously. So, that kind of damage can be covered in this provision. Now, why there is an inclusion of this provision to cover the other damages? Because it can be the other damages does not have scientific data to put restrictions. Then, but there are, let's say, some effects that can be observed. So, how the country can take the measures? For example, let's say the COVID thing, it was not known earlier, so it spread suddenly, many countries without taking precautionary measures. So, in the light of such spread of such infections, there has to be precautionary measures taken, and for taking those precautionary measures, many a times the member states may not be having the right kind of data or the scientific evidence to show that there can be spread of these kind of infections or disease. But still, even if they don't have those data or supportive evidences, for the time being they can impose the restrictions. That is why it is stated to prevent, that is like a preventive measure, or precautionary measures can be taken. Prevent or limit other damage within the territory of the member states from entry, establishment or spread of pests. Key points: the sanitary and phytosanitary agreement introduces new discipline that govern trading practices at the international level, because usually in many nations the people are ignorant when the goods are carried from one place to the another place in the domestic market, from one corner in their home country to the another corner of their home country. But same is not the case when the goods are taken from one nation to the another nation. They are transshipped, or there is a cross border movement of the goods. So, in that respect, one of the quality standards that has to be fulfilled, or that has to be maintained, is based on sanitary and phytosanitary standards. It sets out the rights and responsibilities of the WTO members that wish to take actions to restrict import in order to protect human, animal or plant life or health. Now, we need to cautiously understand what do we mean by the term rights and responsibilities. Now, the rights is like earlier we have discussed the protectionism. So, protectionism is something not based on the right. Right is something where we have to take affirmative steps based on some evidences. So, here it gives us the right which has to be claimed, or which has to be asserted. Now, once it is clear that there are chances of any such grave danger or any such infection, those rights can be applied, or those rights can be availed. It can't be that the other country counters or challenges that why such restrictions are imposed, or what are the grounds of imposing the restrictions. Of course, the grounds of imposing the restrictions can be analyzed, or it can be further evaluated, but so far as the restrictions based on concrete grounds are concerned, they cannot be further challenged, because that becomes the right of the state to protect its citizens, to protect its living creatures. Therefore, that becomes the justifiable ground for any such member states of the WTO to put restrictions. Responsibilities of the WTO members. That means the member state, they must not conceal, they must not hide what are the ingredients used for any such foodstuff or any such item that is exported in a different country. So they must realize that it is their responsibility to make things more transparent, and also to maintain the right standard that is acceptable to the importing country, because it's not simply the question of seeking benefit out of the trade being practiced, but it is also the question of putting the life of the human beings, putting the life of animals and plants at risk. So it's about a combination of rights and responsibilities of the WTO members that are set by the sanitary and phytosanitary measures that wish to take action to restrict imports in order to protect human, animal or plant life or health. Restriction should be the minimum necessary to achieve their objectives. They should be based on scientific principles and not maintained without sufficient scientific evidence. Now the question arises that how far we should go for the restrictions, or on what basis we should go for the restriction. That is definitely a very debatable issue here. Now the restriction that should be minimal. That means if the foodstuff they qualify the minimum criteria, or they are up to the minimum standard mark, they should be acceptable. It can't be that the member states they are asking for the best quality of packaging, the best quality of the product that is included in the packaging. So that kind of standardization, or making claims based on that kind of standardization, will be something discriminatory or arbitrary. So once the genuine criteria, and those criteria, how that is devised or how that is accepted based on scientific evidences. So if it is proven through the lab results, through the results of the test, that this much of criteria for the health of the people or for the general health of the people, of course there can be exceptions, or let's say for the 90% of the people is acceptable, then such like foodstuff or any such commodity that otherwise can be termed as health risky can be introduced in such market. So restriction should be minimum necessary. If some alternative, that means minimum necessary, that means if some alternative can be made or some other arrangements can be made, then why not to go for that. So the minimum necessary to achieve their objectives, they should be based on scientific principles and not maintained without sufficient scientific evidences. So otherwise those claims will not stand, but only in one thing those claims can stand, like stated to you earlier, like the things like pandemic or epidemic, or there are chances of widespread infection if things are not checked at the precautionary level. So in those cases definitely some steps can be considered as the rightful measures. For example, let's say there is the news that the chickens or the ducks, they are having some infection, and in some countries those ducks have been killed. Now it can be that many other countries they are exporting, but their ducks are not infected. However, there can be restrictions on the import or export of those ducks despite the fact that they are not infected, as a precautionary measures, so as to avoid any major, let's say, epidemic or any major catastrophe. Governments must notify each other of sanitary and phytosanitary measures in the course of preparation. So what is the criteria and what is the standards, health criteria, packaging standards, processing standards? It can't be that once the goods have reached to the destination or the port of destination or the market, after that it is challenged. But at a very preliminary stage, or once the goods are ordered, or prior to their entry into the market, it should be clearly notified by the states that if the eatables are to be introduced in the market, in our market, then this should be the minimum criteria, or we are expecting the exporters to fulfill these kind of preparation criteria, processing criteria, packaging criteria, and then they are welcomed in our market. So it should be known to the outsiders or to the exporters at a prior level. Members are encouraged to adhere to international standards where they exist. although higher standards can be enforced if there is a scientific justification provided in accordance with internationally accepted risk assessment techniques. Now, there are two things. One is those standards, they are set by the nations alone. Like if there are, let's say, more than 165 member states of the WTO, each member states having their own sanitary and phytosanitary measures or their own health standards. That is one thing. Another is that there are international bodies who have like set that minimum standards for the human beings in general is like this. So that has to be met. Now, if all the member states they start claiming that their standards should be met, then it will be very difficult to continue with the WTO trading system. So there has to be one common standard for all, and that is why it is stated that members are encouraged to adhere to international standards where they exist. So one common standard, that is the international standards, acceptable to all. That is the general criteria. But in certain cases where there are higher risks, or the people think that we need to introduce a standard higher than that of international standard. Let's say there is a country A, maybe their population are more vulnerable to a particular kind of disease or particular kind of bacteria or particular kind of food stuff, because they are not used to it. So in that case they can maintain higher level of standards to be reached before those food items are introduced. Maybe their standards are even higher than that of the international standards, but that cannot be out of fancy. That has to be supported by some scientific evidences that in those cultures or in those areas or in those regions the higher standards are necessary. Now, that can be because of the climatic conditions, like the people from the warm climate, they have their own abilities or their own limitations. The people from the winter places or the having cold climate, they have their own limitations. So realizing that fact, there can be some variance in the genetic factor also, and that might require that certain different standards are to be maintained when the food stuff is exported from one country to another, depending upon the limitations of the people in general. Members should seek to accept the sanitary and phytosanitary measure of other countries as equivalent, even if different, where they provide the same level of protection as their own regulations. So there are two things. One is what kind of process has been used for the protection or any protective measures. What kind of process has been used? One. Other is the outcome. That means things are disinfected or the final result has been achieved. So there are two things. For example, there is the food items that are exported from country A. That should be totally bacteria free. This is what we say, or that should be free from all the bacterial or fungal infection. Now, the country A, let's say, is applying different kind of disinfectants or different kind of medicines to disinfect or to kill those bacterial level, and country B is applying different kind of disinfectants or antibacterial for making that food stuff free from bacteria. But the net outcome is that both the food stuff from both the countries are bacteria free. So when the food stuff from both the countries are bacteria free, they should be considered that equivalent standard has been accepted, has been maintained, even if the process of disinfection or process of deactivating this bacteria or disinfecting from the bacteria is different. But as a net outcome, both the food stuff or from the food stuff from both the countries are they are no more infected. So that kind of approach should be adopted, because nations, they do have their own processing methods, they have their own methodology to apply these disinfectants or to maintain the sanitary levels. So I repeat this: members should seek to accept sanitary and phytosanitary measures of other countries as equivalent. So even if they are different, the approaches are different, they must accept. It should not be the point of argument or point of contention between the parties that why they have not applied our own method, or why they apply the different method. Countries as equivalent, even if different, where they provide the same level of protection as their own regulations. Control, inspection and approval procedure should be undertaken in no less favorable manner for imported products than for the like domestic products. Now comes the procedural aspect, that it's okay, the countries that are exporting, they say that we have committed we have fulfilled our commitments with regard to the quality of the product. Now comes the testing part. So the labs where these testing is done, or the agencies through which these testings are done, they must also not be discriminatory in nature, and all the methods that they are applying, they should be of the same type, the way that are being applied to the products that are produced, the food products that are produced in their own country. So I mean to say here, the imported food products, if they are tested in the lab, and the domestically produced food products, they are also tested in the same lab. They must be tested in the same conditions and applied the same methodology for testing. The Sanitary and Phytosanitary Agreement confirms the right of the WTO member countries to apply measures necessary to protect human, animal and plant life and health. Now firstly, in the first line, the word emphasized is right. Now this is kind of a very different issue, because usually the kind of protectionist approach that is discussed in the WTO, they are kind of defensive mechanism. They are not the kind of rights, or they are kind of distortionary effect that are being produced because of the protection. But here this is one agreement which justifies the protectionist measure in terms of right. That means any affirmative action that is taken. Now why the right concept has been introduced here? Because it's also apart from the responsibility that the member state does have, it's also the matter of constitutional right of the people of that particular country, the right of that states to meet the health requirements and the living conditions of the people. The Sanitary and Phytosanitary Agreement confirm the right of WTO member countries to apply measures necessary to protect human, animal and plant life, health. This right, now there are all these ingredients that are applicable to animal, plant life and health of all. This right was included in the original 1947 General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade as a general exclusion from the other provisions of the agreement, provided that such measures are not applied in a manner which would constitute a means of arbitrary or unjustifiable discrimination between countries where the same conditions prevail, or a disguised restriction on international trade. But then again, this right was subject to certain conditions, that this should not be applied in an arbitrary or unjustifiable manner. The arbitrariness comes into the picture when there is a lack of scientific evidences, or unjustifiable discrimination, where there is a minimum threshold level of health standards are met, but still the member states try to push on with their own standards, and mainly where there are same conditions, like they have same continental conditions or the same geographical location, or they are close neighbor to each other, but with the intention simply to discriminate the product from one country entering into the another country. This agenda is set that kind of discrimination is not acceptable under the sanitary and phytosanitary measure rules. So I thank you very much for participating in the discussion on sanitary and phytosanitary measures. We further continue with this discussion next time. Thank you.